Well, all right. Hello. How are you? Hope you're doing well. My name is David Parsons. This is Nostalgia Trap. We are cruising through 2026. I don't know about you, but I feel like I'm sort of in a holding pattern until we find out if there's actually going to be midterm elections. I hate shaping my life and the experience of my everyday emotional reality around midterm elections. Like, who cares? We've gone through so many of them, but I guess that's just the kind of guy I am. I can't help it. I'm sort of attached to the narrative one way or the other. And I know that listeners to Nostalgia Trap are like that too, because I've heard from so many of you over the years. You can't help yourself. And we talk about a lot of that stuff on our News Trap episodes with my good friend Justin Rogers Cooper. I invite you to go check those out. If you haven't subscribed, you can find a home there on our Patreon. The links are in the episode description. We appreciate it. But today I've got something a little bit different for you all. This is a conversation with two friends I've been lucky enough to meet through the Grape Jazz Club here in Ventura, California. I had Monte Montgomery, a piano player and all-around jazz hipster, on the show a couple months ago to tell his life story. So you can check that out. I'll put the link in the episode description so you can find that episode. But Monte introduced me to another friend of his named Alan Burgess. And Alan is a guy that's got a lot of takes on culture and politics and history and music. And this is a really fun time when we all get together. I wanted to bring those conversations to Nostalgia Trap because when I'm talking with Monte and Alan, I'm thinking, this is the kind of conversation that we should be having on the podcast. So I hope you agree, and I hope you enjoy our time with Monte and Alan. Today we're talking about the whole idea of cultural appropriation, whether or not that actually exists, whether or not it's something we should be concerned about. And Monte and Alan, and of course I, have lots of thoughts on the subject. So this was super fun. I hope you enjoy. Okay, let's get started. Here's my conversation with Alan Burgess and Monte Montgomery.
So I've been down the cultural appropriation hole for the last week, man.
So you went down the cultural appropriation rabbit hole?
Yeah, I did, man. Way deep into it, man.
Nice. Well, I hope you shed some light on it for me. You know, I was thinking about this. So I went, and maybe this will start us off. I had this experience just a couple weeks ago. I've been taking music classes at the local community college, and I took this class on the history of rock and roll. I'm no longer in the class, in part because the first class was uninspiring, and I don't want to diss the professor. I don't think he's listening, but he was. He said this. He said he was talking about the history of rock and roll, and he said, now there was a time in American history where black people and white people did not get along very well. And I thought, okay, already you're kind of smashing some history together there. And the other part of it was he said, but when rock and roll came, white people and black people started dancing together at rock and roll shows, and it did a lot to like solve the problem of racism. And I was just like, what? As I was listening to this, because it sort of blew my mind to hear it put that way.
I love when people make some sort of statement that's so crazy that you don't know how to, like. It's like, where the fuck do I begin unpacking that bullshit?
Exactly. Yeah. But you know what? I don't know. I grew up with a very Forrest Gump sort of vision of Elvis Presley and rock and roll coming along and like changing the kids and making things better. I was thinking about music with both of you guys, of sort of like, you know, music and race as a sort of magical potion in American history is something that a lot of people buy into one way or the other.
And I think more than they buy into it, it's a space where they can project into it whatever insanity they've been harboring for a long time.
Yeah.
You know, you can you make the story what you want it to be, what feels good to you. But the idea that rock and roll brought all the white kids and black kids together and they were dancing. It's just so crazy. I don't even know what the fuck to do with
David, getting
Yeah.
back to your, how old is this person? I'm just curious.
Probably in his 40s, honestly. Yeah.
that. Oh, that explains a lot.
I think it would honestly to give some credit to the guy because I've been in this position. I've been a college professor for a long time in my life. There's sometimes like an impulse to sort of like present a dumbed down version of something so that students can
Hmm.
sort of like as an almost like an entryway into the
Hmm.
subject. You know what I mean? Like a little like, but that one just really bothered me. I was just sort of like,
And
because
what was the
I
part
don't
that
know if
bothered you?
it bothered me in part because I'm sort of like, well, racism doesn't seem like it's solved, or it's
Hmm.
or even maybe if it's even solvable. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Hmm.
And then the thought that uh, the late '50s is when this all came together, because of music just didn't make any sense to me. Especially because people were still fighting all the way into the '60s and '70s, like on the streets about race. It's weird to think that it was Elvis in the like late '50s that solved this.
That is too. You know what I think a big problem with it is? I think it's easy for people to interchangeably use the word racism and bigotry. Like
Mm-hmm.
That's
like
interesting.
bigotry is I don't want you as a member of my country club and I don't want you dating my daughter. Black people don't give a fuck about bigotry. I give a fuck about racism, meaning a structural imbalance of power. Like I give a fuck about whether or not I don't get a bank loan because I'm black, as opposed to I can't join your country club. I don't care about your fucking country club, but I do care whether the value of my property went down because you redlined.
Right, right.
Right? Racism involves power. Bigotry is just stupid cultural fucking thoughts.
Yeah, but the way that racism is presented in American life, it's usually big. It's usually the bigotry end of it. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
the popular perception is like, don't be mean to people.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
don't fill your heart with hate. That sort of thing. Learning about redlining, learning about the GI Bill,
Right.
leaving black people out like that. That's something that you learn in a college class, and that's
Oh yeah,
something.
it
Yeah,
takes work.
yeah, that's something that most people, I think a lot of Americans just don't even understand that version of racism that you just described.
They don't. They don't. They think, and the word racist is so fucking freely thrown about. And usually, what happens when the biggest phenomena with white people, I'm gonna make a sweeping generalization here, is that the minute I start talking to them about race, the first 10 minutes of the conversation is devoted to them convincing me that they're not racist.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like this, which is racist.
I've totally been that guy. We were talking about this
Yeah.
last time. The, Monty, I'm sure you've experienced this too, where there is a when you interact with black people as a white person, there is a desire to signal that for whatever reason. I don't know what it is, but it's just like I seek approval from black people. You know what I mean? Like I want them to think I'm cool. I'm one of the cool ones.
Uh-huh.
Like I don't want you to think I'm one of the corny ones. You know what I mean? And the way I'll say that is just like, yeah, man, I'm cool. And like music might be the way to signal that sometimes. It's just like,
which is
man, I
why
listen to
that
hip hop.
which is why that person created that fantasy about it ending racism. That
Right.
same desire you just expressed is why they do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes
I,
sense.
David, I'm as bad as you are or worse. I'm just, in fact, Alan and I had this very conversation driving to a tennis game one time when,
Right.
and we'd known each other pretty well by then. And, and I just laid it out there. I said, hey, like, I'm like way less racist than most white people, right? And he kind of went, well, yeah, sort of. I was expecting him to stop and, give me a big hug, but it turns out I'm not as far along as I thought.
Here's
Yeah.
what white people don't get about harboring, for lack of a better term, racist thoughts. It's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay. Like, and people are shocked when I say this, and I've said this in front of audiences. I harbor bigoted thoughts about black people, and I'm black. You
Mm-hmm.
can't live in America and not. It's okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it and figure it out. But the mechanism that makes so many white people immediately want to defend their affinity with black people is astounding to me.
Yeah. It's well that in that movie Get Out. I don't know if you guys saw that movie, but like
Mhm.
Yeah.
there's the white character that's sort of this white liberal guy. He says, when he's trying to like, buddy up to the black dude is like, well, I voted for Obama twice, and like I would have voted for him for a third time if I had the opportunity, as if that was just going to win him points automatically. But I get it. I mean, uh, part of this, maybe this connects to music in terms of just like what being cool and hip is. And
Mhm.
I know Monty has experience with this because Monty, when you came on this podcast before, you told the story of being in a funk band with like a bunch of black dudes in the 70s.
Yeah.
And I'm sort of like, to me, I would be like, oh, I'm so cool now. Like if that were me, I would be like, these guys accept me. I'm playing music with them. Like
Right.
that's what cool is. It's there. It's a really weird irony because it's part of like romanticizing the black experience and like the black people are like the baseline of what is hip and cool. But then I'm gonna act weird
Mhm.
around them because I want to try to get some of that myself. You know what I mean?
Which is as anti cool as you can get. Like the thing about cool that's attractive is really cool people don't need to verify that they're cool. They're just cool.
Right. I'm
You know,
thinking of
As soon as you start defending you're cool, you're not cool anymore.
I'm thinking of
I
Quentin Tarantino sitting there in his like FUBU like gear and his like Kangol hat and he's one of the prime offenders of like I'm down with like
Uh
black culture and you're sort of like you're announcing it a lot, dude.
huh.
Alan, I've been saving this story up for this
Okay.
podcast
Okay.
because this is going to make you cringe so hard you may throw your back out. But this happened to me last week in a recording studio down in LA. I've
Mhm.
got this album project going, and we needed some really good backup singers on it, and we got two quite well known actually, like black R&B backup singers, and they sang a bunch of
Women.
a woman and a man.
Okay.
And so we get, you're in the studio, it's really intense, and you form a team because you sort of are together fighting the common enemy of having the recording come out shitty.
Right.
You
Right.
all
Right.
want the same thing. So we've been in there for a few hours by then, and this we were, you both sit in between the songs, just to relax a little bit. And somebody was talking about people's relative ages. The recording engineer was really young. I'm 68. My songwriting partner is 67 or so. And then these singers, we weren't sure how old they are because, I'm terrible at knowing how old black people are. I'm just not good.
Mhm.
I do pretty well with white people. Black people and Asians, I cannot do
It's
it.
very tricky. Yeah.
Yeah. So things were pretty cool. And I think the engineer or another guy came in the room and said, uh, and the female singer said how old she was, which was pretty close to my age. And this guy said, "Hey, how come she looks so much younger than you?" And I said, and I've used this line before and gotten a laugh. I said,
Uh-huh.
"Because white cracks." Now, if for those of you not in the know, there's a statement. Well, explain why the word crack, Alan.
Because but the whatever predisposition for black people to not look their age is kind of encapsulated in the phrase "black don't crack."
Right. So I flipped that on his head in order to show. I mean, I just it was like the urge to throw yourself off a cliff.
Yeah.
And when I said that, the guy kind of laughed, and I turned to the woman, and she gave me this look like, everything was going fine until you tried to prove how hip you were.
Oh God. I'm so
And
glad I wasn't there,
it took
Monty.
me a little while to dig myself out of that, but I mean, she really was cool about it later on because she recognized in me that there was a good impulse behind it. It was just buried under a whole lot of levels of insecurity.
And you know what, Monty, relative to appropriation, first let me say this. The thing about as soon as I hear cultural appropriation, it immediately registers in my head as something that needs to be defended. You know what I mean? It's like it's a negative thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's appropriation. You might as well put stealing or thievery in there instead of the word appropriation. And
Right.
I don't know that that's the case, because if it's you're not culturally appropriating, and this is where black people get on my nerves, just because you attempt to do something from another culture. If that was the case, how could we share fucking cultures?
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But black people develop this ability to detect the intent underneath, no matter how clumsy the attempt might be. And
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
and one of the things that that I love about you, Monty, and especially in our car rides, like you get up, you can ask a racist question, but I understand, not that you have, unknowingly, but I can feel the intent that it came from actual curiosity as opposed to trying to prove your hipness or whatever. And it's like, which goes back to my phrase when I was talking before about white people harboring racist principles. It's okay. I'm much rather be around somebody that asks me a racist sounding question if I can detect that it's truly out of curiosity. It's
Mm.
not about some attempt to be cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like good intentions will forgive a lot of clumsy ass bigotry.
Well,
Yeah.
there's a subtlety there. You know what I mean? That you're talking about that people can pick up. I don't know. I think class has something to do with this a little bit too, because before I went to graduate school, I was working in a lot of like warehouses and like just kind of
Hmm.
shitty jobs, and I was working with like in a mixed racial group. You know what I mean? It was in
Hmm.
LA, it was in the Valley, so I'm like the conversations we had were very free and open, and we just sort of made fun
Hmm.
of each other, and there was just sort of a kind of roast comedy attitude
Hmm.
towards race. Whereas when I got into the academy, like people became very careful, like very, very careful of like what they're saying, what if they're
Hmm.
using the right words, and all of a sudden it's like there's a fear that enters the
Yeah.
landscape. Yeah.
And it's palpable. Like I've done a lot of construction work. There's something about manual labor tasks that makes you drop a lot of pretenses.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there's a commonality. Like, you know what? We gotta get this fucking wall up by 6 o'clock.
Uh,
So all the bullshit. You know what I mean? Whereas in academia, you got all kinds of other distractions. Everything from what kind of car they drive, what kind of clothes they're wearing, where they grew up. Like if you're
Hmm.
working digging a ditch with another person of a different race, you don't really give a fuck about all that.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead, Monty.
that's true. That's very true in music too, because
Yeah.
uh, this is a theory I've had for a long time that that people get along the best when they've got a common enemy, but pick the enemy
Hmm.
carefully. Like the enemy, when Claire and I were in a black gospel choir, 298 black people, and me and Claire, the only two
I love this.
easy to spot. And when we were learning these songs, and the secret to gospel choirs is that the songs are arranged so that you're always right at the top of your range. You're always like trying to force out and just you get this level of excitement and intensity. And so as a result, you're always trying to this really difficult notes, which are complicated too. And so
Hmm.
the whole choir comes together, and you all of your differences, gender, race, sexual preference, and there are a lot of gay people in gospel choirs, are dwarfed by the common enemy of the difficulty of the music.
Yeah.
Right, right.
And in your case, Alan, of getting the wall put up by the end of the day. And because music is such a deep emotional thing, you've got that on top of the common enemy. You just bond. I mean, it's beautiful. And
Yeah.
jazz is the same way.
Hmm.
It's a meritocracy. Either you can sing the note, either you can play the lick, or you can't. And that kind of diminishes any other differences.
Yeah. Black people have a phrase that's kind of the pass key phrase in reference to a white person's attempts at relating. It's like he's invited to the cookout.
See, and
And I
that there would be no greater compliment I could be given than like
Right,
a black dude being like, he's invited to the cookout. I'm like,
right,
yes, like I
right,
did
right. And
something right. Yeah,
there's one notch above that, and it's like if a black person ever says to you to somebody, "Fix that boy a plate," you know
right.
you're in. You know you're in.
Man.
I last year I read Miles Davis his autobiography, which is hilarious because it's sort of like in his language. He's just
Hmm.
like says whatever, and there's a sort of like honesty to what he's saying, but he's sort of all over the place on this issue of cultural appropriation of white people in jazz. Sometimes he's like really seems angry at white people, and understandably so. He has a sort of like attitude about it, but other times like he really defended Bill Evans as a piano player in his group when there were a lot of black people who were like, "Couldn't you have chosen a black piano player?" And he was like,
Right,
"Yeah, if you can find one that plays like this guy,
right, right,
like
right.
he was pretty pragmatic about it." And I think that's really interesting because it plays into the idea that you just said, Monty, of like sometimes we have a task we got to do, and we have to drop
Mhm.
all the bullshit in order to do this together.
So the two criteria, I guess you would call them, or the two things that define or disprove cultural appropriations to me are intent and execution.
Mm.
Those are the two. Those are
Hmm.
the two criteria by which I judge a white person's actions in terms of doing anything black. It's like, Lonnie, you ever hear of the Teskey brothers?
No.
The Teskey brothers are this. I don't know where. Oh, they're from Australia, which is really freaky. But they're like this blues band, and this one of the Teskey brothers sings this song called "Rain." And you would have thought Otis Redding was channeling through this white kid.
Wow.
It's
Mm.
insane. And
Hmm.
there's a bunch of YouTube, TikTok things where they show people hearing a piece of music for the sake for the first time, and they show their reaction. So they show this young black dude and his dad, who's like an old gruff black dude, and the young dude's gonna play a clip of this kid singing for the dad,
Uh-huh.
and the dad is like, that boy sang that shit. I mean,
Ah,
he gives it the overall stamp of approval, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful thing to watch. And that's what I mean by the biggest criteria for black people as to whether you're appropriating it, even if you're appropriating it for nefarious commercial reasons, if you can sing it, you're
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
You're good.
I've
You
seen
know what I
that
mean?
happen on Showtime at the Apollo a lot because that show that
Yes.
comes on after Saturday Night Live. I watched that a lot when I was a kid, and one of the funniest moments that always happened, and it happened at least once per show, is some
Hmm.
corny looking white guy would come out,
Right.
and the whole crowd would be like boo and like laughing before he even started, and then
Uh-huh.
sometimes he would sing so well that he won the
Right.
crowd over, and everyone just started like standing ovation, and that was always really satisfying because it was sort of like yeah the skill overcame the initial
It
like you're
does.
not allowed to do this.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you could have the most humane, empathetic intentions in the world for relating to black people. Give them all the credit for what you're about to sing and all that. If you suck, we're booing you off the fucking stage. Like, shut the fuck up.
That's funny. It's cultural appropriation that's offensive if it sucks.
Yeah, yeah, that's what offends us. Like
Yeah.
really bad renditions of shit. Yeah.
I'm curious what I don't know as much about the history of record companies in the 50s and 60s when what they called at the time race records really did start to
Hmm.
get covered by white artists. And sometimes they were done really well, like, the Beatles doing Money by Barry
Hmm.
Gordy, which he didn't necessarily write. We're getting,
Right.
this is different, but when you're not only, you're appropriating the culture, but you're stealing the royalties. I mean,
Mm.
that sort of tips it into a different category of offense, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. In fact, I got here's this definition I found. Cultural appropriation is the adoption of the elements like symbols, dress, music, or customs from a minority or marginalized culture by members of the dominant cultures, often without understanding, permission, respect, or acknowledgement of the original material.
Mm.
Uh, uh, original material, commodification, stereotyping,
Hmm.
leading to commodification, stereotyping, or the reinforcement of imbalances of power.
Mm.
You
Mhm.
know, um, and there was another piece there that talked about the commodification of it. Uh, that whole record company thing, that's appropriation to me. You know,
Mhm.
it's like it's only appropriation, or it's more often appropriation if it has to do with commerce.
Mm.
Other than
Hmm.
that, it's just white people trying on a different shirt. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No harm, no foul.
Yeah.
You know, if you suck, we'll tell you.
Well, it also to me like is part of a larger sort of phenomenon in the kind of consumer capitalism is they're looking for something new and they often look for something new in cultural scenes. You know what I mean? So they'll like
Mhm,
they'll sometimes like I mean it's clear that so the one of the videos I watched on cultural appropriation because I did some research too, Alan, was like I watched a video of a woman who was talking about Elvis and Tom and Colonel Tom Parker and sort of
mhm,
like the idea of like finding gold in kind of what was called race music and bringing it to white people was clearly seen as a money making scheme and Elvis was kind of the conduit of that and in part Elvis was sort of a mark for it in some ways because
mhm,
he was really good at doing the music and was really interested in that music and was kind of raised around it and and was good looking and could kind of communicate this music to a bunch of white teenagers who got into it. And it seemed like Colonel Tom Parker was more the villain in the story because he was the one that
yeah,
sort of did what you're talking about, which is sort of like this is gold, like this is going to make us a
mhm,
lot of money. And what is it? Is it the Big Mama Thornton?
mhm.
Is that the
Hound dog.
Hound
Yeah,
Dog? Yeah, that's the example people cite the most.
I believe Elvis really did like black people, but in black culture. But like you said, Colonel Parker was the one kind of running the show and creating the commodification. And in turn, back to that whole execution thing about it, I don't know a lot of black people, and particularly a lot of black musicians, that really think very fucking highly of Elvis Presley's music.
I was going to ask you that. Like,
Yeah, no. I mean, it's
like how
interesting mildly.
is Elvis for white people?
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah, completely. Like, there's no black kids are not running out buying fucking Elvis Presley records.
I don't know if anybody is anymore.
You know, it's like I got an uncle that sings Hound Dog better than fucking Elvis Presley does. A drunk uncle that sings it better than him. Why would I buy Elvis Presley singing Big Mama Thornton song when I can go hear Big Mama Thornton?
Yeah.
You know, and he don't get me wrong, he held an appeal. Elvis was cool. Like you can't take that away from him. He was
Yeah.
cool. Um, but musically, Elvis doesn't fucking, there's no Miles Davis cover of a fucking Elvis Presley song.
Yeah, I mean that's interesting because on the one hand I think you're right. Like this like okay, Elvis does sort of a kind of a piss poor version of better music and he even
Right.
said that. I mean the video I was watching had some like clips of interviews with him where he was like, "Look, black people do this music far better than I could ever do it.
Right.
I just like singing this way." But the other part of it, like the Forrest Gump part that I got when I was young, the story I got from my dad, right? Who
Uh-huh.
told me that his parents hated Elvis Presley because he was making white people and white kids act black. And because he was like, in other words, they were coming at it from like a different sort of
Hmm.
racial position where they were basically saying like Elvis is ruining everything because he's making all these white kids act like they're black kids. And God, I heard that a lot around hip hop in the 80s and 90s when I was growing up is that like hip
Hmm.
hop is a bad force in American society because it's making white kids sag their pants and talk like they're black. And like that part of it like on the one hand you could wring your hands about the cultural appropriation of it, but that sort of I think that's part of what the professor was sort of in his rude way getting at, which was that like this did kind of break down some barriers some way.
Well, that's kind of hypocritical. I mean, I think what they're mad at is that white kids are overtly trying to act black.
Yeah.
It's not like that older generation that would say that about. I remember seeing an interview with Taj Mahal one time, and he said, "The Rolling Stones didn't become famous singing fucking English hunting songs." You know what I mean?
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's just a degree. Um, a lot of popular white culture that wouldn't be interpreted as trying to act black is in fact doing that, but it's
Mm.
just not as fucking obvious. You know,
Hmm.
you don't, uh, you don't get uh, like today you'll see white kids imitating hip hop, and I love the whole thing with white kids wondering if they can say the word nigga because it's in a song.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like how far can I go with this? Yeah. But yeah, like the idea, I think that African American culture is the most imitated culture in the world.
Yeah.
You
For
know,
sure.
by far. You know, the only argument I could have about it is whatever underpinnings to like classical European shit there is. And but
Mhm.
Yeah.
that's almost a fucking baseline, it seems like. You
Yeah.
know, but in terms of the out and out imitation, like who the fuck won? Who is this cool? There used to be a meme that went around about a lot of stuff, and it'd say you may be cool, but you're never going to be as cool as an old black guy. Like there's no cooler than that. That's like the epitome, you
Yeah.
know.
That feels true to me. It does.
Yeah. It's like we all want to be black. It's cool as fuck.
Well, Amiri Baraka. You know Amiri Baraka, the poet. He was Leroy Jones before he became
Oh,
Amiri
yes, yes.
Baraka. Yeah. He
Blues people should be required reading for everyone.
I knew you had to know that. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's really about jazz, right? Blues people.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But it's really about culture, black and white in America through the medium of jazz.
Right. So he has a line in one of his poems where he says, Elvis, if Elvis Presley is king, who's James Brown? God? And and I love that. And it made me want to ask you guys about James Brown because I know you guys are both you were around in the 70s.
Hmm.
Um it always trips me out when Monty says that his favorite band is like Tower of Power and these
Hmm.
like funk bands from the 70s because it's like it's sort of a lost world in a lot of ways. Like there's this documentary called Watt Stacks
Yeah,
that's
I've
like
seen it.
Hmm.
yeah that I used to show in some of my classes. And it's for those that don't know, it's kind of like this. I mean, speaking of Jesse Jackson, who just died today,
Yeah.
Yeah.
he's in that movie, and he's one of the most memorable parts of the movie, honestly, because he does this whole call and response thing where he's like, "I am somebody," and like
Somebody.
super cool. But it's also like it feels like a lost world, especially the music. Like when they bring all the
Hmm.
funk bands up and stuff, it just feels like I don't know what was funk to you guys because it feels like that music if you go to like a rock and roll textbook, they talk about Sly and the Family Stone as like
Hmm.
this was the vision of what like music as a multicultural experience and that sort of
Right,
thing.
right,
And
right.
it feels like that's just not that doesn't really exist anymore. Like what was the funk moment like racially?
I'm 72, so that is my era of music, like dead center. And even though, like, if you're using that example that you just did of Sly, that wasn't a calculated marketing or even uh, practical fucking strategy. Like, let's get women and let's get a white guy, and like that wasn't it. That was just San Francisco was like, if you can play, come on, let's do this. You know what I mean? So uh, nostalgia, just that word. It's a fucking illness. It allows us to polish the edges off of shit and shape it the way we want to because it happened in the past. Like I'm of Sly, that entire generation, but we weren't thinking. We just wanted to fucking dance.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, Guys, I can I can tell you the instant that I got
Uh,
my soul vaccination to cite one Tower of Power song, and another Tower of
uh,
Power song is called "Digging on James Brown." So they
uh,
freely admit the guy that wrote Emilio Castillo and Steve Kupka, the guys that wrote that song and formed the band, freely admit that James Brown was their musical inspiration more than anybody else.
mhm,
But getting back to Sly, I guess this was 67 or 68. I was growing up in this little town in the Midwest, in mid-Michigan, and listening to the same, my soil had been prepared to receive the funk. because I've been listening to all these songs that I didn't realize were retreads of R&B songs. I mean, the Beatles, I didn't know the Dixie Cups. I always thought the Dixie Cups and Going to the Chapel were white. A lot of these backup singers, uh, they just sounded in this particular way that I liked. And I was listening to some jazz and Henry Mancini. I got into some of this stuff in my earlier podcast with you. And then I got a call from my neighbor, Stuart McNitt, who lived down the block from me. And he said, get over here right away.
Uh-huh.
Over there, he's got his close and play 45 RPM record player. He puts on a 45 and he said, don't talk, just listen. Now, Stuart McNitt, I had like white blonde hair, the palest skin. Stuart was a ginger on top of that because he was Irish or Scottish. He had freckles. We were the skinniest, scrawniest white kids you've ever seen in your life. He drops the needle on what turned out to be the first 4 bars of this thing. I wasn't sure what was going to happen because it's just a big crescendo of a bunch of horns and organs and stuff. And then it hits the groove, which is sing a simple song. And when it went da 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 da, I exploded. I've never gone back to the person I was before I heard that song. And like in a way, all the funk music I've listened to was based on that inciting incident. It still gives me goosebumps today.
What year was that, and how old were you when
I'm
the needle hit?
I'm thinking 60. We can look it up. It's like probably 67, 68, maybe 69.
Okay.
So I was like 11.
Okay. Oh, you were young. Okay.
Oh yeah. I mean,
what was it about funk that was so engaging to you?
Well,
it's on the one.
Well, we could have a separate, very boring conversation about that too, because
right.
The movie that Questlove just made, or was it? No, it was there's another documentary that just came out, talks about that phenomenon, and it's not quite right, but it's too abstruse.
No, I know what you mean. On the technical aspect, yeah. But it's a guttural fucking thing that makes it funky or not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It just really is. And what Bob Marley say? He who feels it knows it. It's as simple as that. James Brown was a phenomenon for me. One of the and I didn't realize this till later. Besides its own inherent value as for whatever his music is, it was music that in the Black community, you, your parents, and your grandparents all felt that shit. You know what I mean? Like it was something like you'd hear a James Brown record at a party that 13-year-olds were having, at a party that 40-year-olds were having, and a party that 60-year-olds was having. We all had that. Once that needle hit on the James Brown record, every Black person in it was one. And it's purely a physiological response. It's not even a fucking thinking response. It's just it hits you where it hits you.
It's like an emotional content.
Oh yeah, completely.
Yeah,
completely.
I've got an analysis of this question that I think it leads back nicely to cultural appropriation too.
Yeah, please.
Which is the ingredients of let's say take that song for an example. Sing a simple song. Did not only some of the ingredients came from Africa. So a lot of them came from dead white European composers. The idea of simplification. The example I always think of is in Beethoven's Ninth, when the melody goes, the fourth movement goes da 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 da. You know what I'm talking about? Then ba da 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 bop. It's a syncopated note. So back when Beethoven was writing in the 1700s or whatever, he knew that putting a little spin on the ball there would wake people up and grab them in an area that was not being addressed by the straight ahead, square, dead white European male composing that was happening up until then.
It's visceral. It really is. It's a physiological fucking reaction. Yeah.
Today is Fat Tuesday. So, we might as well mention New Orleans because I took a much better class last semester that was the history of jazz. And we learned a lot of what you just talked about, Monty, this sort of like idea that New Orleans was a place where all these different cultures came together, including the European, chords and harmonies and structures of written music, right? Coming into a world of music that had been developed basically by enslaved people who were singing the field hollers and cries and like the sort of like emotional content of slavery and like those things coming together and like a little bit of blues in there and those structures produce jazz, produce blues. And to me, I thought that was really, really fascinating. That like American music, because you talk about cultural
Hmm.
appropriation. This isn't the word the academic word for that is syncretism, where things come just all of a sudden synthesize and come
Hmm.
together. But the idea that the unique American music would be the beautiful structures of and harmonies of European music combined with
Hmm.
like the sounds of like the tortured wails of
Hmm.
people experiencing slavery like that, and that's American music like that. To me, there's nothing more perfect in a lot of ways, and it makes sense that later on we end up having lots of conversations about that and like about like what it really means to do black music, because it feels like at the root of it, when you're saying you're appropriating black music, you're really saying you're taking the history, you're taking the experience. You're like, you don't know this pain. You don't know this, this register of the American
Hmm.
experience. And like that feels like it's, whether it's conscious or not, that's there in these conversations about cultural appropriation to me.
There's a yeah. That was what was that word again? Sync.
Syncretism. Yeah.
So
Usually
it's
people
like
talk about it with religion. That like,
Hmm.
religious syncretism, like the like traditions from Native American cultures mixing with traditions from French Catholics and then something new being born,
so it's a fusion, like a synthesis.
Yeah.
There's a term that I think fits this pretty well. It's really from the world of botany and genetics. It's when you cross two strains of some kind of organism, and say a plant that has this good feature and this bad feature, and this other one that has a different good feature and a bad feature, and then you cross them. The
Hmm.
result is better than either one of the two was individually, because
Right.
the stronger, better traits are,
Hmm.
they win out over the weaker ones. So, and they call it uh, uh, hybrid vigor.
I
Hybrid
love
vigor.
Ah.
that.
And
Yeah.
here's a cool musical example of it. It's salsa music,
Mm.
because if you
Hmm.
take, this is also called Afro-Cuban rhythm. So,
Hmm.
traditional African music and even the stuff from the 70s, like Fela Kuti, I could never quite get into that because it wasn't rhythmically interesting to me enough. It was a little bit not monotonous, but repetitive and sort of drone-like. But when
Hmm.
you cross that with Latin rhythms that came from like Spanish guitars and stuff, and
Hmm.
it becomes more syncopated. It turns into salsa, which I like better than either mariachi, which is I think is like plant A, or African traditional music, which is plant B. You put them together, you get Afro-Cuban music, which just
Right.
rocks.
Right.
That's so funny. I
Mm.
mean, I the word for that in pop culture is mashup culture. There was a
Right.
lot of that with like, especially like early DJ stuff. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of something called the Gray album, but I think it was Danger Mouse as a DJ that put together this album that was the mixture of Jay-Z's Black album and the Beatles' White album, and
Yeah.
so
Hmm.
the resulting mixture, like, for whatever reason, it's not hot anymore. But at the time, people were like, "This is the coolest thing I ever heard." I remember thinking
Hmm.
that when I was in my 20s when that came out, and I was like, "This is so cool, man!" Because now I can listen to Jay Z's like cool rap, but alongside like these like beautiful compositions from the Beatles. It was kind of
Hmm.
like, I don't know. It was the dream. It was a weird dream of exactly what you're saying, like hybrid vigor. I like that.
So
Yeah. Yeah. And
maybe I'm sorry, Al,
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
maybe the upsides of cultural appropriation slightly outweigh the downside. I mean, it's not as if
Oh,
there's
totally.
a
Yeah.
price to it, but if it ends up, giving birth to James Brown and Tower of Power and Tita Puente and Perez Prado, I'm for it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and it
And
also,
and
yeah.
poorly executed appropriation won't last.
Right.
The way that you tell
Yes.
it's a successful synchronicity is if it lives, if it
Yeah.
continues to live. Anything else, I don't give a fuck if you sell 1 million copies. 2 years from now, nobody's going to be talking about that record. They're just fucking not. Yeah, it's
You
Yeah.
guys
funny to
remember
me. It really is.
Jive Bunny and the Master Mixers? Do you guys remember this?
No.
No.
No, see, no one remembers it. It was.
that
I think
I
this
rest
was
my case.
this was deep white people shit. This was like the early Gray album in the 80s. My dad had it. It was it's a song. It was like a single that came out that was but it had the Glenn Miller medley. Da 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 da
Hmm.
da 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 da.
Yeah.
That thing. That
In
was
the
sort of
mood.
yeah, yeah, in the mood. So the song was called Swing the Mood. And it sort of used that and put like kind of like a hip hop beat on it and then put all these
Hmm.
like songs like 50s and 60s songs like Wake Up Little Susie and Elvis songs and stuff like that. It was totally made for people that were probably of the baby boomer generation, but now they're like 45 to 50 years old and they wanted to
Uh-huh.
like sound hip. So it's a very 80s product, but that did not last. And I think that like
No.
I thought that was cool when I was 10 years old, but now when I hear it I'm like, Jesus Christ. I can't believe that products like that exist. But what I was going to say is that, the whole idea of cultural appropriation does partly like sort of assume that there are pure cultures, that there's like a pure
Yeah.
culture somewhere that wasn't a mix. It seems like that's a weird thing to assume, especially this late in the game of human history. We're all we're all mixtures of a lot of different things. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Yep.
And the other thing that it assumes, which is dangerous to me, is ownership of a thing.
Yeah.
Like that's the dangerous part. Um, there's black music, which has become a commodity, and there's music black people make, which is way different. It's like, you know, we didn't start claiming anything was stolen from us until it was started to be used for nefarious. Like we're glad to give it to you. You don't have to steal it. We'd be glad to share it with you and give it to you until you started making money on it and cutting us out of it. Now it's a problem.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
the problem isn't that you're using our culture in terms of appropriation. The problem is that you're profiting from it and not acknowledging it, compensating for it. That's the fucking problem.
Yep.
It's not like we don't want you using our music. Now you've got us into thinking it's ours.
Yeah,
Hmm.
right. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
you talk about race music in the 50s, like segregating culture, but like I grew up with the MTV and MTV totally, and my MTV might as well have had like white hour and black hour. You know what I mean? Like
They
they
did.
had, because they had
They
Yo
did.
MTV raps and like,
Uh,
I knew when they were all of a sudden it was like the R&B show and they're playing black music and then it would go back to white music and they wouldn't mix that
Headbangers
much.
Ball. Remember
Totally.
that?
Yeah. And I always think this is like at some point when I was listening to radio in the 2000s, rock radio only played rock white people, which is interesting. It was,
Hmm.
just white rock bands, basically white dudes with guitars. That's what rock music was in the 90s and 2000s. And if they ever played rap, they played the Beastie Boys or Eminem, which were white
Right.
dudes doing rap. And I always thought that was so weird because I was like, okay, now they kind of fit into rock and roll a little bit because they're white dudes. Monty has something
Well,
to say about that.
the great mashup, of course, was the Aerosmith Run DMC version of Walk This Way,
Right.
That's
where they
right.
literally break down a wall. I thought that was like that was the coolest thing since the I Have a Dream speech.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the both bands recognized that the other one had something. They said, "Hey, this is going to fit together," and it did. To me, it did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. It's true. It's funny because that revolution in radio, broadcast radio, where it became super commodified, where it became playlists, where it became formatted. I grew up in the 60s and 70s in the radio sphere of New York City. So I listen, and then there were college stations. I love growing up listening to a mainstream radio, commercial radio station that would play Sly 1 minute and then play Yes, or Simon and Garfunkel the next. When DJs just fucking played music, it wasn't as structured and formatted it as it is now. And it didn't even break down walls. It neglected to construct them, which was
Mm,
really good.
I like that. Yeah.
Have you guys listened lately to what's been happening in country music? I've never listened to country music much in my life, but the way that they have appropriated or fused or synthesized with
Yeah.
a lot of like R&B. When I'm driving along, when I'm driving on the freeway, I just hit the next station button over and over again. Well,
Yeah.
I don't do this with my wife, because she would put a gun to my head. But I would be clicking along and I'll hear some kind of really great funky groove. And then the singer comes in and goes, it's like you don't know until the vocal comes in, which is the dead giveaway because it's got this Nashville twang to it. But
Right, right.
production wise, it's every, sampling, hip hop, arranging, synthesized trick that has become that has evolved over the right up until today. I don't know how to feel about that because it makes me feel like a traitor. Uh,
I
It
can't
deeply offends me.
I don't even listen to I can't remember the last time I listened to commercial radio, like a
Right.
radio station. Like I can't. I just fucking can't.
I
that's
don't
because
think
You know?
I'm so old.
I wonder how many
And
people
I don't
still
have
listen to
to.
that, to listen to radio. It feels like most people are listening to playlists on Spotify. Like,
Yeah.
and not
Mm.
only that, but like Spotify created playlists, like not playlists they made themselves, but like they just like pick a playlist and it just goes. You know what I mean?
I got one today that was a playlist that YouTube Music comprised, put together from what I play.
Mhm.
Yes.
So it's a
Right.
playlist of my music that I didn't curate, and it's pretty good.
Well,
Yeah.
it better be.
It
Right?
knows.
I loved it. Yeah.
Yeah, the
And I
country
love
music thing is weird. Like I've seen a few different like country rap type things. Sometimes that can be like really just like I don't know what's going on. You know, it just feels like they're separate things, but they shouldn't be really. Like when it comes down to it, like rock and roll comes from country music too. You
Mhm.
know, a lot of music comes from the South. You
Yep.
know what I mean? Like that's just where it came from.
Yep.
there's a lot of internal battles going on within country music about what comprises authentic country music. Some
Yeah.
of them think it's too slick. Some of them think it's too R&B. So they're battling out for what the actual definition of country music is nowadays.
And also
Yeah.
politically, because the whole genre is very much, rightly or wrongly, associated with with conservative politics. I mean,
Yeah.
Wrongly, man.
yeah, you look you look at that counter programming of the Super Bowl show. That was mostly country acts.
Right.
Yeah,
And, yeah, and so that goes back to you know, when I was young, it was the 90s and country music was becoming very commercialized. Like Garth Brooks was huge in the
yeah,
90s,
he was.
right?
He
Like he
was.
was like just a giant figure and his style of country music was more in line with like Billy Joel or something. It wasn't super twangy, but there was that sort of, I don't know, that Republican conservative element of it. Whereas the country music my dad was listening to was those like, you know, junky dudes like Willie Nelson and Johnny Cash and you know, like really fucked up the outlaw country. Like that to
Yeah.
me was the spirit of country that I got into. And so that
Hmm.
kind of like whatever it is now with like my beer and my truck and like that kind of shit, it
Hmm.
I saw someone say like about that Trump or not, it wasn't Trump, it was like the conservative alternative halftime show that they
Yeah.
called it white minstrelsy. That like it was like white
Wow.
white people essentially doing like their own version of like this is what white people are, like a cartoon of what white
Yeah.
people are. Yeah,
I don't know
it
how much
offends me
time
as a white guy.
I don't know how much time we got left, but I
Yeah.
want to bring up one thing that might be a little. So far, the three of us have been in violent agreement, but
Uh-huh.
this might lift the lid on a little bit of controversy.
Okay.
This is about rap music
Uh-oh.
and my particular journey through it. The first rap
Hmm.
tune I ever heard was, like a lot of us, the Sugar Hill Gang, uh,
Rapper's Delight.
Rapper's Delight. And what
Hmm.
the first time I heard that, like it was funky. It was based on the nice Nile Rodgers, Bernard
Hmm.
Edwards, is that his name, groove from Chic, and and it was like hip white people's uh, delight because it was funky, but it was there was nothing. It wasn't racist or misogynist or violent. It was about all these universal problems, like you go to a friend's house to eat and the food just ain't no good.
Right, right.
The
Yep.
It was
macaroni
almost like a
salad-
nursery rhyme. It
Yeah,
was
it
almost
was.
like a nursery rhyme.
I'm a
But
rapping to the beat.
I
Yeah.
know, but
It's
Yeah.
it
super
was
fun.
so
Yeah.
I was fine with it. And then there was That's the Breaks was a great tune. And again, it's about
Curtis Blow.
Yeah.
and then Rodney Dangerfield did Rapping Rodney, and so far it was all like comedic stuff that was universal and not there was nothing there was no racial angle to it.
Mm.
And then between then and now, I mean that lasted like 5 minutes. And then rap music got to my ear a lot more, violent and racist and misogynistic. So I want to ask you, Alan, who bearing the burden of
Hmm.
representation as you do, what happened?
Yeah, I know. You, you know what? Once it becomes ubiquitous, first of all, there is no rap music. Like there is many variations of rap music as there are black people. So, you know, it's easily made. Doesn't take a whole lot of money or instrumentation to make it. So you're gonna hear like a lot of bullshit. You're gonna hear a lot of really bad shit because if it gives a common voice to everybody, because I can walk out in the corner now and there'll be some kids rapping. Then you're gonna have to suffer through listening to like really bad versions of it. My problem with hip hop, I don't even know if I ever used the term rap, but hip hop is what happened after that. There became a conscious brand of hip hop that talked about real. I Talib Kweli uses the term dialectical materialism in a fucking hip hop song. You know what I mean? So you got to
You're like,
sort that shit out.
I thought this was about drug dealing and killing
I,
people. Why am
I know.
why am I having a textbook lecture in my rap now?
Right. So whenever I hear somebody give their opinion about rap music, or even my own, um, I've at least been born witness to enough of over a wide enough genre where you got to tell me specifically what you're talking about. There's still good, really useful, conscious hip hop being made. You just got to look for it. Where Rapper's Delight could be played on top 40 radio.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
know, so I don't have this one opinion about rap music. It's like, okay, if we're talking about hip hop, who you talking about?
Okay.
And
Well,
then
how
I'll
about
give you my
Yeah, that
opinion.
was really stereotypical and racist of you to put it that way, Monty.
yeah. Okay. So gangster rap or wet ass
Yeah.
pussy. I always feel
But
like
here's
it's I think it doesn't.
Can I offer my thoughts real
Yes,
quick?
please.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
this is all, I grew up with hip hop and like different versions of it and very much like lectured to sometimes about like, well, you should listen to conscious rap and not gangster rap because gangster rap
Right.
gives a bad sort of vibe to what black people are and even accusations of like minstrelsy. Like the guys that are doing
Hmm.
that are cashing in on negativity, and that was a big conversation in the '90s. Of course,
Yeah.
I do a show, a podcast about '90s music, and we just did an episode about the album Low End Theory by a Tribe Called Quest that came out in 1991. That's jazz rap. I mean, that's
Hmm.
like it's like double bass the whole time, and like just they're talking about bebop, they're talking about
Hmm.
the history of music in the same way you guys are talking about it as sort of like this really important thing. That stuff is great. But then like the rapper that became the most dominant in my life in the last 20 years is Kanye. And like he
Hmm.
started out like when Kanye first came out, he was doing basically we're like this is conscious rap. This is a guy talking about politics, talking about race, and
Hmm.
also the beats are all from like funk and soul music from the 70s. Like it couldn't have been
Hmm.
better. It was like this is like the apex of what hip hop can be was Kanye. And then Kanye's mom died and he went a little nuts and he started his rap changed. He stopped talking about politics and prison and incarceration and things like that and started talking about basically being a rich celebrity and like being
Hmm.
like but he did it, that's the thing, it's like he did it so artfully. You talk about like how if you do it well it overcomes your problems with it. Kanye,
Mhm.
my favorite albums are when Kanye drops the politics and starts talking about being a rich celebrity and like a disgusting human being. Like, because it's so much fun to listen to. Like, it's like such a
Right.
journey. And you're like, oh
Yeah.
shit. Like, now it's even realer. Like, I thought
Uh-huh.
this stuff when he was talking about incarceration was real, but it's even
Yeah.
realer now that he's talking about fucking supermodels and, being this crazy rich
Right.
celebrity. And so, I don't know. To
Right.
me, like it's the art of it matters. And I'm with you, Alan, in the sense of like thinking of hip hop in my life has been so many different things that it's
Yeah.
like it just kind of it's hard to separate it from any other pop culture in some ways. It just became
Yeah.
really, really
Yeah.
dominant. Yeah.
Well, maybe we should save that for an entire separate show because we haven't scratched the surface about my
Not at all.
not that
No,
you
I love talking about that stuff.
Yeah.
about my history with hip hop and my bizarre.
Monty was a rapper, an underground rapper in the late '80s. We'll get to the albums you dropped.
Michigan's Most Wanted.
That's great.
I do have a rapper name if I ever make an album.
What is it?
Two Ply.
Love it.
Oh,
And with that,
I'm gonna put that in the folder along with White Don't Crack or White Cracks. Sorry, I got your joke wrong.
right.
I don't think
Black
it
don't
matters.
crack.
That's right.
Black don't. Man, that's too funny. I got I saved next time we're together, I'll show it to you. I saved 3 clips of what I thought exercised appropriation.
Yeah.
And one of them is this guy, and I don't even know who he is, but he's a pretty prominent rap artist, hip hop artist. And he was talking about the time that he got into some sort of argument with Eminem. And the dude said, what was the rhyme he made? Dude took my facial tissue and turned it into a fucking racial issue.
Oh.
like he, but he roasted the guy, and the guy said, he said that, and the crowd went nuts. He said, I couldn't even get mad. I couldn't get mad. It was just so fucking good.
A double rhyme. I love it.
Yeah, he said I couldn't even fucking get mad. Then I got another clip of there's some Southern beauty pageant. And for the talent portion, this little white Southern debutante decides she wants to sing I am going. What is it? That song from Dreamgirls?
Okay.
I'm telling you, I'm not going.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she fucking massacres it. I mean, it's so bad. It's almost you can't even fucking listen to it. It's just horrible. So it was one of those ones where I don't know what your fucking intentions were, but your execution was so bad. We're sweeping you off the stage at a fucking Apollo, man.
Like I didn't think it was racist cultural appropriation before, but now I do.
Yeah. It's like it wasn't intentionally racist. It's just racist.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
Well, Alan and Monty, really good to have this conversation with you guys. I look forward to more.
Yeah.
I feel like there are mysteries within the world of culture and race in America that 3 of us can get to the bottom of. We're going to solve it just like Elvis solved racism.
Right.
Thank you,
Who did I
guys.
hear? I heard Ray Charles roast Elvis one time. It was
Oh, I got to
fucking
look that up now.
Oh, dude, find it.
Well, David, thanks for having us on.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, man.
We'll talk to you
Enjoy.
soon. Well, all right, my friends. I think that's going to do it for Nostalgia Trap today. I want to thank Monte Montgomery and Alan Burgess for coming on the show and having a fun conversation with us. I know I'll be talking with Monte and Alan more in the future, so I hope you enjoyed that. If you've got comments, ideas, outrages you'd like to share with us, we've got social media links in our episode description. And honestly, if you're listening to Nostalgia Trap, you've found a sort of niche within the larger podcast world. We've been around for a while. Check out our Patreon. I think you will enjoy what you find there. And that link is in the episode description as well. We'll be back with more News Trap and Nostalgia Trap episodes very soon. My name is David Parsons. I wish you well, and I'll catch you next time.